So, anxiety has always played a role in my life. I have to be on time for everything. I have to go the same way to work. I have to go the same way home. I have to have a schedule. If there is a change to the schedule, I have to know about it in advance. You can't just spring it on me and expect me to be spontaneous and go with the flow. I grew up in a very chaotic household, and I can't survive in chaos. I can't be late. I hate being a minute late. I feel that I have this obligation to people to be on time. My anxiety has brought itself into slight touches of OCD. My anxiety has manifested as anger towards myself. I have self-harmed. I have thought more than once about harming myself enough to just end it. So I didn't have to have the anxiety and the anxiousness and the feeling of despair and that everything is wrong and I'm doing everything wrong. When we started coming to DCC almost a year ago in November, Chastity and Shag had been after us for months. They knew we were not happy at our previous church. They knew that we were just kind of going through the motions. So Chat texted me one morning and said, "Hey, we're going to early service, come with us." So I told Chris, "Let's get the kids ready, let's go. What can it hurt? It's just church, right?" We haven't missed a Sunday. I feel weird if I miss a Sunday. Since stepping a foot into DCC, my anxiety lessens. Because there are so many people here who suffer from mental health issues, who suffer from anxiety and OCD and depression and just so many other things that we can't fathom, that I have a home here. I have people here who understand. I know at any point in time I can text somebody and say, "Hey, I'm having these feelings. I'm about to have an anxiety attack. I'm having a panic attack. This is going on." And they're immediately there with a prayer and a word or a verse to look up to help calm me. And I've never felt that anywhere else. Since coming to DCC, I have definitely refound my faith. I know that anxiety isn't a dirty word. Depression isn't a dirty word. It happens. But Matt and the staff and the leadership that we have at DCC have helped me figure out how to not make it be a dirty word. They've helped me discover the path to take to where I don't want to self-harm, to where I don't want to take my anger out on other people. I still have to drive the same way to work every day. That will probably never change. But I don't have the anxious-ridden moments that I've had before.
Good morning. Welcome to Destination Community Church. I'd like to thank you guys for being with us so much. And as I mentioned to Chantel, who actually attended the first service today, you'll see a few more of these videos as this series goes on. It's obviously very difficult, especially the first time you share in a way like that, to talk about those kind of personal things. It takes a tremendous amount of vulnerability. So I'm very thankful that we have people in our church that will openly share their stories in that way. I want to welcome everybody, especially if you're a first-time guest. If you've not been with us in a long time, this is a very special series that we're going to be going throughout the next 4 weeks on mental illness and the mission of the church, titled Troubled Mind. It's very important and unfortunately often neglected. But we're not going to neglect it. We're going to talk about this topic this morning. So I do want to lay a little bit of groundwork. I want to let you guys know a few things just to create some needed parameters for you today that are really important. First, I am not a mental health expert. I am never going to claim to be a mental health expert. I'm not a therapist. I'm not a psychiatrist or anything like that. My background, I have a bachelor's degree and a master's degree in sociology, and that's what initially brought me to this area, was to teach sociology at the college. But also I have a master's of divinity. That's more of a pastor's degree. So that's really my background. I just want to let you know that I'm going to stay in my lane as far as these topics are concerned. We do have some resources on your sheet because I still think that the scientific part, I think that reaching out to doctors or therapists, if that's the need, that you definitely do that. And we want to always make sure that we're providing those kind of resources. Also, I'm not going to be an advocate or discourage medication. I also don't feel like that's my place. I feel like it's a completely situational thing. So I'm never going to tell you guys, people need to be on this, or people need to be on that, or people don't need to take that. Again, it's not really my position as a pastor. And I'm also not going to diagnose anyone or get into the specifics of each form of mental illness. If that was kind of the stuff that you were looking for as you came here, then you're probably going to be a little bit disappointed. But the purpose for this series, just to give you guys a little bit of an idea as to why we're going to be talking about this stuff, first is to bring about an awareness of mental illness in the church and let people know that they are not alone. There are people that are in here right now that suffer from anxiety, depression, obsessive compulsive disorder, maybe it's PTSD, whatever it might be. We want to let you know that these are the kinds of discussions that actually should be taking place in the church, because it's the exact same kind of things that Jesus would be talking about. Also, to use the Bible as a source of encouragement for those who are suffering. You could call me old-fashioned, I suppose, but I still believe that the answer to every single human problem is right here. And I'm not saying that exercise or medication or the right kind of diet or living a more structured lifestyle or whatever it is that might not help mental illness, because it definitely will. But we're definitely going to take everything that we're talking about from this book right here, because it's absolutely transformed my life, and I know that it's transformed the lives of several other people that are in here as well. But also to encourage those struggling to commit to our Celebrate Recovery ministry that's going to start on September the 11th. It's going to be on Wednesday nights. A lot of times whenever we think about Celebrate Recovery, we think about drugs and alcohol, but there are so many different other areas. I went to a Celebrate Recovery, and I'm part of a Celebrate Recovery in Ashland, Kentucky. And there are a lot of people that are there for depression, that are there for anxiety, or maybe even more serious forms of mental illness, if it's schizophrenia, if it's bipolar disorder, whatever it might be. So I just want to give an awareness that we do have something here that can really, really help you. It can give you an outlet. It can give you a support group in some really positive, very strong ways. So again, I'll say that this series, I'm sorry if you came here for a cure, this series is not going to give you a cure. It's not going to answer all of the possible questions that you might have. It's not a scientific study. It's simply a call toward hope for people who do suffer. And what you're going to find over the next 4 weeks also is that if you've never suffered from any form of mental illness, there's also going to be a lot of content that we're going to talk about that will help you, that will help people that have never struggled with any of these kind of things, that just know what it feels like to be in dark moments or dark times in their lives. And a reason that I feel that this series is so important and why we're talking about it is because for some of you that struggle, what you've been told in your life, especially if you grew up in church, if you're struggling with anxiety or depression or some form of fear, is just have more faith. You know, if you have more faith, you're going to be okay. What you need to do is find the courage. I know that there are times that I go through, I can relate to what you feel when we talk about this blockage, like this place where it feels like it feels impossible to extend our faith any further. It feels impossible to trust the way that we are supposed to in some of those moments. So as a result, what happens is a lot of the people in the faith community look at us as weaker, or they look at this as a weakness, and then that stigma just continues to grow. And I think that this is a very serious problem. So those are some things that we want to talk about as well. So when a person starts to struggle with anxiety or depression or fear or worry or whatever it may be, they've just been diagnosed with an eating disorder, something that might be a little bit more serious, one of the first things that they want to say is that life isn't fair. And that's kind of what we're going to talk about today, and what we want to frame this conversation around is this idea that life isn't fair. My family structure was absolutely wonderful. Life was great, and now this has happened. I was going to church, I was being faithful, I was doing like all the things that I was supposed to do, and now all of a sudden, here I am in this situation. Work was going good. The marriage was good. All of these things in my life really seemed to be lining up. And for some of you, like I said, I even believed I was doing what I was supposed to be doing in my relationship with God. And out of nowhere, it just feels like my life is completely over. And you're 17, 18 years old, or you're 25 years old, or you've just went into that big promotion and you're 40 years old, or whatever that looks like. And this is especially difficult whenever we look at people who don't seem to have those problems. And if you struggle with some form of mental illness, you know exactly what I'm talking about. How is it that that person or that family, they can sit in the restaurant without like the overwhelming anxiety that makes them need to leave? Or how is it that that person can speak in public, or this family seems completely normal, and they don't have the same issues that I have? Then we take this jump to another place, if you come from a faith background, and we start to blame God. We start to suggest, well, maybe God doesn't exist. Maybe God isn't fair. Maybe God isn't good. God is absent. God is evil. And some of you in here, you might be in this place exactly right now because of what you're going through. You're going through a really, really serious season of depression. Your panic attacks are so overwhelming that you feel like you can't get anything completed in your life. And the first thing often that we want to point to is not the disease or not the problem, but usually we want to say, God, where are you? Like God is causing these problems. So today, I want to make a few things clear. The first is this. Life often doesn't make any sense, all right? And I don't care if you're a Christian, if you're not a Christian. I think most of us could agree that sometimes, for whatever reason, life just doesn't make sense. Things happen to every single person that is in here. But the purpose of this life and this faith in Jesus, this walk with Jesus, following Jesus, is not for everything to make sense. It's for us to trust God in every season of life. So what this means is that you are going to go through circumstances, if it's not mental illness, if it's a divorce, if it's a struggle financially, if you've lost your job, whatever it might look like, it's not about everything making sense. We have to get to a point where we stop depending all on our feelings. So if we feel good, God must be good. If we feel bad or circumstances are bad, well then God must be bad. That has absolutely nothing to do with a walk with God. It's putting one foot in front of the other, regardless of the circumstances in our lives, every single day of our lives. A life in Christ is not determined or established by circumstances, good or bad. Because bad things happen, it doesn't necessarily have to do with your moral failings or because you are doing something wrong. It's determined or established by a divine plan that we don't understand most of the time. I would love to tell you, as the pastor of this church, that I've got it all figured out and it all makes sense and nothing bad ever happens in my life, and I don't struggle with the anxiety and the depression and some of the issues that I have as a result of mental illness or whatever, that my family members don't pass away, that difficult struggles don't happen financially, but that just wouldn't be true. There are always circumstances in my life, just like your lives, that don't make sense, but that's not the point. The point is that you continue in the dark, in this walk of faith, regardless of the circumstances that are around you on a daily basis. So let's examine this notion, this idea that life isn't fair. Today we're going to be in Exodus chapter 5, if you want to turn there. If you want to look up on the screen, you're more than welcome to do that. But we're going to look at Exodus chapter 5. And this guy named Moses, who is a very significant Old Testament figure, has been called by God at the burning bush to lead the children of Israel out of Egyptian slavery. Early on, Moses is able to convince the children of Israel that he is their leader. He does this through signs and wonders. There's several things that he does, and he convinces them, I am supposed to be your leader. But convincing Pharaoh, which is the leader of Egypt, is an entirely different story, because Pharaoh does not believe in this God. Pharaoh has never even heard of this God. So what Moses is doing, to give you a little bit of context, a little bit of background, is he is going to the Pharaoh to talk about this God and how the children of Israel need to be able to celebrate and worship this God, and we'll see what the reply is like so that we can get a good idea of this concept of life not being fair. So we're going to look at the first 9 verses. This is the New Living Translation. After this presentation to Israel's leaders, after he's talked to the leaders of Israel, Moses and Aaron, which is Moses' brother, went and spoke to Pharaoh. They told him, this is what the Lord, the God of Israel, says, let my people go so they may hold a festival in my honor in the wilderness. All right, so let us take this 3-day opportunity as Israelites to worship our God. I am asking you to give them a short break from their work. That's what's going on at this point. Is that so? Retorted Pharaoh. And who is the Lord? Why should I listen to him and let Israel go? I don't know the Lord and will not let Israel go. But Aaron and Moses persisted. The God of the Hebrews has met with us, they declared. So let us take a 3-day journey in the wilderness so that we can offer sacrifices to the Lord our God. If we don't, he will kill us with a plague or with a sword. Pharaoh replied, Moses and Aaron, why are you distracting people from their tasks or from their work? Get back to work. Look, there are many people in the land, and you are stopping them from doing their work. What they're doing is they're making bricks, all right? That's what their occupation is, these particular Israelites. That same day, Pharaoh sent this order to the Egyptian slave drivers and to the Israelite foremen. So at this point, he's mad. All right, he's upset with these constant requests that Moses and Aaron have. And this is their punishment. Do not supply any more straw for making bricks. Make the people get it themselves, but still require them to make the same number of bricks as before. So what we're going to do is we're not only going to continue to give them the work, we are going to add on more work. Don't reduce the quota. They are lazy. That's why they are crying out. Let us go and offer sacrifices to our God. Load them down with more work, make them sweat. That will teach them to listen to lies. So you see the dilemma that's going on in this situation. Punishment. They go from busy to busier. They're trying to do what's right. They're trying to have an opportunity to worship God. And all of a sudden, life isn't fair. All of a sudden, their circumstances are worse. So what I'm going to do today is I'm going to make a connection between mental illness and the unfair circumstances that the Israelites are dealing with in this moment. So for those of you in here today that are living with the pain of depression, anxiety, an eating disorder, PTSD, a bipolar disorder, schizophrenia, or whatever it may be, trusting in God does not guarantee an easier life. And this is something that a lot of us in here need to understand because we still haven't accepted. We still haven't embraced this reality in our lives. Trusting in God is never going to guarantee that your life is going to be easier. So Moses is boldly trying to provide an opportunity for the Israelites to worship God. But Pharaoh wants nothing to do with this. Number one, he's never heard of this God. Now, he's heard a lot of the ancient gods, but Yahweh, the God of Israel, he's never heard of this God. He also understands that this is going to take them away from their production and away from their work. So let me sum this up for you. Pharaoh doesn't want the Israelites to experience any form of freedom whatsoever, because freedom is always naturally going to lead to rebellion. And this is the concern that's going on here. Now, mental illness, for those of you in here that suffer, or you have friends or family members that suffer, certainly feels like a form of slavery and controls everything. You feel like you are a slave to anxiety. All right, you can't be in public places. You feel like you are a slave to depression. Maybe you can't get out of bed. You feel like you are a slave to fear. You are a slave to racing thoughts that never stop. You are a slave to the fear that you are going to commit suicide. You are a slave to the scars and the memories and all of the things that keep coming back up from your past. And Moses and Israel, they're asking some of the same kinds of questions that some of you in here right now are asking today. Why in the world is this happening to me? Why is this happening to me? If God loves me, why would he allow this? God, are you even there? You know, that's a question that some of you are asking right now in your life. God, are you even there? Why would you allow this? Did you not see how good things were for me? Did you not see what things did look like? I was trying to be faithful. I was trying to do everything that you told me to do. And now all of a sudden I'm a completely different person. I can't even take care of my kids. I can't even work. I can't take care of the responsibilities of my day-to-day life. I am completely lost in this situation. So Moses is learning an important lesson as he goes through this, that you're going to learn too if you follow Jesus long enough. Trusting in God will always bring greater storms in your life and greater wilderness moments in your life than not trusting in God. You see, this leader that has been chosen is all of a sudden been completely cast away. All of a sudden, all of the Israelites, you know what they're thinking? You told us you were our leader. You told us you were great. Now all of a sudden, you have made our situation much worse than it was. So then obviously, Moses is going to God. If we read the passage just a little bit further, God, I did what you told me to do, and I've made the conditions of people worse. So I'm going to say something today that is not going to be popular, and it's not going to be what you want to hear if you're struggling, because if some of you came here specifically for this series, you were probably hoping for a cure of some kind, or you were probably hoping that everything could get better, a way out. Most people don't want to gather straw. All right, most people don't want to go out and look for straw throughout their lives. But I want to challenge you with this thought, and this is what I want you to really think about today. What if what you're going through is not actually because God is bad, but is actually because God is good? And because there is actually this divine plan to pull you in and get your attention in any way possible. Barbara Brown Taylor said this. She's a great writer. She wrote this book called Learning to Walk in the Dark. It's not just good for people that struggle with mental illness. It's good for people that have been through anything difficult. But I want you to think about this, because what we're doing is we're flipping the script. And we're asking you to look at your mental illness or your struggles in a different way. She says this: step one of learning to walk in the dark is to give up running the show. Next, you sign the waiver that allows you to bump into some things that are actually going to frighten you at first. Finally, you ask darkness to teach you what it is that you need to know. So instead of living in the victim mentality of this life is horrible, I can't believe that I'm going through this. And let's just be honest. This stuff is life-threatening. It's difficult. You do have suicidal thoughts. There are horrible things that go on. But what if you were to completely live into this darkness, knowing that God is trying to restructure your character and say, okay, God, I'm here. What is it that you are trying to show me through this experience? How is it that I am supposed to grow through this? I don't understand anything. These circumstances that we're talking about, I don't understand anything that's going on around me, but I am trusting in you. Parker Palmer said it this way: most of us arrive at a sense of self only after a long journey through alien lands. Only after a long journey of going through things that we have no understanding of, circumstances that we can't even begin to understand in our lives. And if you look at the situation of Moses and the Israelites, if you go into the story further, they are going to be in alien lands for 40 years. They are going to be walking in complete darkness for 40 years, having no idea what's going on. But you see, Moses understood something critical that a lot of the others did not understand, and it's this: God leads through every area of difficulty. And that is a promise that you must hold on to. God leads through every area of difficulty. So while pursuing God, life becomes more difficult for the Israelites. But God was leading. So make sure that you're paying attention to this. Gathering straw is horrible, and it feels like punishment. There are some of you in your life right now, you are spending every waking moment of every day gathering straw. And as you gather that straw, you are often telling yourself, life is not fair. Why am I going through this? So gathering straw feels horrible and feels like punishment, but God is always leading you as you gather the straw. So there's a situation where the Israelites are making bricks, and that is not a fun thing to do if you're making bricks the way that bricks are made in the ancient world. And then all of a sudden, more work is given to them, and they're gathering straw. So like a lot of you in here, maybe you've thought about this, maybe you haven't. I know I've had a lot more time to think about this than you, but I thought, why in the world, of all possible things, was straw used? Why in the world was straw used for brick making? Because if you know anything about making bricks today, and I did have to look this up, by the way, they're made with clay, sand, lime, or even some kind of concrete material. All right, that's the way that they're made today. But this is what you really want to understand, and this is what you want to get today. Straw was used to make bricks because it worked to bind the bricks together. The straw was what actually holds everything together. So don't miss this right here. When God sends you in your darkest places and your most trying circumstances in your life, it's for the purpose of binding everything together. It's for the purpose of making everything make sense in your life. So as you walk out to collect the bricks, and as you walk out telling yourself, I don't understand why I'm going through these circumstances, I don't understand why this is so hard, how is it that I used to be able to have a normal relationship and now I can't because this anxiety is so gripping? I'm even going crazy trying to sit in this crowd right now. Why is it that I have to go through these circumstances? As you walk out and as you ask these questions, what God is actually doing is God is binding all of the bricks together in your life. God is bringing you to a place where everything is going to make sense. He is taking you from this place over here to a completely new place. But you will never understand that. And you will never be able to live through those circumstances or get anything if you don't understand what it actually looks like to go out faithfully and collect the straw yourself. Place your faith in God, not in the surrounding circumstances that are around you. And listen, with mental illness, as we talked about this a little bit earlier, I know how hard it is. It's like there's this wall, and God is on the other side of that wall, and if you don't feel like taking a shower, or you don't feel like eating, you definitely don't feel like talking to God. Like, that's the dynamic of how serious some of this is with what some of you are going through. But what you can do and what you have to do is put one foot in front of the other. You have got to get out of that bed. You have got to build the structure into your life, regardless of what it takes, to collect the straw. Because collecting the straw will keep everything together. So life under Pharaoh becomes harder for the Israelites. And for this reason, Moses is deeply distressed. And for this reason, this is what God says: you will inherit the promised land. Because this is just the beginning. You guys are about to walk into some really, really dark times. And you guys are going to blame your leader. And you guys are going to go through some hunger and some thirst and some feelings that you have never had before. But you will inherit the promised land. And guess what? They did. So I don't care about what you're going through today. You are not damaged goods. Your life is not over. Your circumstances do not have to define you. And you want to know what the biggest problem is for some of you? The biggest problem is actually not mental illness. It's that you continue to believe the enemy's lies over and over again. Whenever you tell yourself, I'm 32 years old, but my life is over. I'm 21 years old, I can't even get through college because this depression is, God has nothing left for me. Some of you, maybe you're 50, 55 years old. God has done absolutely wonderful things in your life, but because of what you're going through now, He's finished with me. There's nothing that He can do with me. And you continue to buy into those lies over and over again. We're actually doing a series right before Christmas, a 3-week series on what it means and what it looks like to buy into the enemy's lies about self and also about God. So the challenge that I have for you guys this morning is we talk about not trying to run from who you are, but embracing who you are. You need to learn to live into the story that God has given you. Live into the story that God has given you. You're schizophrenic. You're obsessive compulsive. You have obsessive compulsive disorder. You have an eating disorder. You have bipolar disorder. You have anxiety. You have depression. You have racing thoughts all the time. Has it ever crossed your mind that what you are going through, and when you gather the straw faithfully, that what it can ultimately mean is that you are going to, just like Chantel with her video, you are going to be a voice for so many other people that are going through the exact same thing that you've been through. And what you're going to show them that they couldn't see previous to this was a way out. Live into the story that God has given you. God will never send you to gather the straw if He's not planning on holding all the bricks together. There is a reason that you are going through this. There is a point to this. And while you see your circumstances and you feel the physiological response to fear and anxiety in your body, there is a greater thing that is going on in your life. So if we live into this story fully, what does this actually look like, and how do we do this practically in our lives? The first thing that you've got to do is communicate with God as you gather the straw. And what this means is that whenever you're in your darkest moments, and whenever you're in your most difficult times, even if you feel like God is not there, you have got to be willing to talk to Him. I mean, I do this all the time. I've been gathering straw big time this weekend. All right, and some of you probably have as well. But it's like, God, I don't understand this. I don't know why I'm going through this. This doesn't seem to make any sense. But I know that you're working. It's like that dialogue has to stay open at all times. Because when you start shutting God out, that's when you're going to see the problems. The other thing that you need to do is trust the God that binds the bricks together. At all times, you have to understand, especially for many of you, you've seen Him work through your circumstances. You've seen Him work through your life over and over again. So while we think in our minds, I'd love to have a cure, I'd love to have healing, and I'm not saying that that doesn't happen. I'm not saying that that's not possible, because for a lot of people, it is. But maybe you're going through what you're going through, and you're going to spend the rest of your life gathering straw the way that you are, because God is trying to get all of you. And God is trying to use you to be a voice or to be an outlet for other people, and a voice that other people need to hear. That's what I want you to think about this morning, and I want us to stand. Because what we're going to do this morning is we're going to continue in worship. But if you need to come forward because you've been gathering the straw in a very miserable way, if you found yourself doubting, or if you're just hurting this morning, or you're hurting for someone else, I'd like to invite you to come up and use this altar as long as we need to be here. But also I want to invite the others of you to worship and to sing along with us this morning.